How's it going, everybody? In this video, I'm going to walk all of you guys through how to install VMware ESXi 6.5 inside of VMware Workstation. This is going to be lending you very handily to the ability to go through and test out all the technologies on the VCP blueprint. So once I get the install kicked off, I'm actually going to come back to this screen right here, and I'm going to kind of whiteboard a little bit and explain to you not only how to install VMware ESXi 6.5, what we did, and what's actually going to be happening, but I'm also going to whiteboard out how anybody that's interested in learning about hitting the technologies on the blueprint can not only download the code, so ESXi, vCenter server, so on and so forth, but how you'll also be able to use VMware Workstation to build a virtual lab to test all these technologies out inside of. So that's what we're going to dig into right now. So the first thing we want to do is we actually want to go through the installation of ESXi. Now I've got 3 installs right here that are working beautifully right now. Only one of these is actually being tested with and stuff like that. The other 2 I'm still working on some other things that I'll come back to those in sometime in the near future. But they're there. So currently I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ESXi hosts. And right now I'm chewing up about 40% of my RAM, which just sits around, I don't know, 20 gigs-ish. Not quite that. Well, maybe just a little bit more than that. Anyway, the server that this is sitting on top of has 64 gigs of RAM in it. So because it's got so much RAM, I can afford to, for a ESXi server that I'm not planning on doing anything with beyond showing you how to set it up, then I'm okay with just showing you the install. So anyway, we're going to click create new virtual machine. I'm going to click next, and then I have to choose the hypervisor installer that I want to use, and I want to use 6.5. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next, and I need to choose a place to go put it. So I've actually got to go and I've got to go through and create a place. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to say ESXi 6.5 in this case here, this one's going to be 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go manually navigate to the location. Once I've navigated to it and select it, I'll unpause the video, explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so now that I've got it mapped the way that I need to, I actually have an external hard drive that is connected via USB 3.0, and I have created a folder on that external hard drive called VMs. And inside of that, I've got several individual folders. And in these folders, I am labeling this is where I'm storing the hard drives and things like that for the VMs. So all these VMs, all their virtual hard drives are being stored on this server, or on that particular hard drive. Right now I'm going to give it it automatically allocates 40 gigabytes of hard drive space. That's okay, because I choose what would be the equivalent of thin provisioning, and all I do is it says split virtual disk into multiple files. This actually lends itself very handily because I don't have to go through and say, okay, I can take and install 8 ESXi hosts, each one with a 40 gig hard drive, and I need to make sure that I have at least 320 gigabytes of hard drive space. I don't have to do that. I can say, you know what? I have a terabyte of hard drive space available to me. I'm going to allow all the ESXi hosts residing on VMware Workstation to have, I don't know, 4 gigs of hard drive space individually, because all this hard drive is being used to do is take the installer and install it and expand its files. That's it. I have other storage that I'm going to be using for things like iSCSI, NFS, etc. in upcoming videos. So we're going to click on next here, and I'm going to modify and customize the hardware. I'm going to give this guy 8 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to set the network adapter to be a bridged mode. The reason why is I want to be able to use the computer. I have another computer that I'm using, and that computer is actually connecting to each one of these hosts individually through vCenter server, through the vSphere client, so on and so forth. So I want to continue to use that method. I'm going to click on close and then finish. So now we're going to go ahead and it's automatically going to launch the installer. I'm going to click on OK. And I come in here, here's the launcher. I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key. And now it's going to start loading ESXi. So this is going to take a couple seconds. Usually it goes by pretty quick. We're talking under a minute or so, or right around about a minute to do what it's got to do. And then once it's done, then we'll go ahead and we will tell it to go ahead and install. So once that's done, like I said, this only takes a few minutes to do. And at this point now we're going to go and it's going to be loading the ESXi installer. And then the next step is it's going to go to the initializing the scheduler. So right now I can back out of this and I can go back over here to the home page and bust out my trusty dusty pen pad. So here's what we want to do. I want to take a couple of minutes and explain to you how you, if you're interested, could build a VMware Lab in VMware Workstation. So the beautiful thing about VMware Workstation is this is considered to be a Type 2 hypervisor, meaning VMware Workstation is an application that sits on top of an existing operating system. In this particular case, I have Server 2012 R2 deployed on this server, and I loaded a VMware Workstation 12 Pro on top of it. You'll notice that I have an evaluation period of 160 days left. That's because of the fact that I happen to be a VMware vExpert, which is a community designation that is awarded to people that show an interest in basically saying, hey, VMware's cool, this is why. So this, I use YouTube and Rikers Island training and some other platforms to talk about VMware. So that's where I have this come into play. So VMware Workstation is a Type 2 hypervisor. What you can do, and I'll talk about the networking here in just a moment. What you can do is, at a very minimum, if you've never dealt with VMware before, I would recommend installing just one host. One host is more than enough just to get the ball rolling. One of the other things I would recommend doing, and this is going to be ESXi, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 6.5. It could be 5.5, it could be 6.0, it could be 6.5. It could be any of these newer releases. 5.5 has been out for a while, so is 6.0. 6.5 was released, I think, about a year ago at the time of this recording. But I have my VCPs in 6.0 and 5.5. This is where I'm a VCP. And I've done a lot of deployments of VMware, so I've got quite a bit of experience when it comes to actually rolling it out. So you would install ESXi in one of the VMs. So this is going to be a virtual machine. And if you're curious, yes, you can virtualize ESXi in a virtual environment like VMware Workstation to test it out and play with the technology. The other thing that I would recommend, if you've never dealt with VMware before, is going through and creating another virtual machine like we have up here. We have OpenFiler, we have ESXi 6-4. I would create another VM. This VM, you could say, download a evaluation copy of like Win 10. Install Windows 10, and then what you can do is you can put these in the same management network, and then from here you could, from Windows 10, when you're on the console or through a remote desktop connection of Windows 10, you could connect via the management network to ESXi 5.5 or 6.0, and then you'll see all of the cool things. You'll actually see this guy pull up right here. Go ahead and grab my other computer real quick. We go ahead and minimize this guy and pull up this guy. You'll actually see VMware Workstation. So this is one of the many servers that I've got running on. So this is a Windows 7 PC that's running in another host that I'm using to communicate with the ESXi host installed inside of VMware Workstation. Go ahead and just minimize that real quick. So that's one of the first steps that you can do. Now, let's say, for instance, you've had a little bit of exposure. Maybe you work with VMware in the real world, and you want to say, okay, well, I want to take this to the next level. Well, what I would do is I would draw another line out here, and I would install a couple more VMs. Now, this assumes that you have the resources to do this. I would recommend a PC. It doesn't matter really what kind, as long as either Intel VT or AMD Is it RVI, I believe is what they call it, is enabled in the BIOS for the CPU, which basically is what they call hardware assisted virtualization. If you've got that available to you, then you're good to go. So then what you could do is you could run these VMs, which will actually, with all this right here, this will allow you to run 64-bit operating systems inside of Workstation. What I would do is then I would take another VM, and you might say, okay, well, that's CPU. How much RAM am I looking at? I would recommend 32 gigs. That's a good round number. You can get away with 64 or 16 or even 24, but you're going to start taxing your system. And the reason I say 32 is that will give you the ability of running 2 or 3 ESXi hosts, each one with 3 hosts, each with 8 gigs of RAM. So that'll be a total of 24 when you're all said and done, where you're not going to be tying up all 24 gigs all the time. You're going to be probably a third of that out of the gate, because you got to remember the hosts themselves, if there's no guest VMs running inside of them, they're not really going to be taxed. So there's not going to be any real resource utilization on them yet. So you could get away, and it's probably going to be a third of this, which will put you back down at about 8 gigs of RAM out of the gate with 3 ESXi hosts. Take one Windows 10 box and install this and give him 4 gigs of RAM. So that's going to put you at around 12 at an idle state. Then the other thing you're going to have to do this is you have 2 choices. You're going to have another ESXi host here. So it could be 556065. It's up to you on how you want to do it. Join into the management network. So this will be a VM as well. If you only want to run 2 hosts, that's fine. So basically chop this down to about 6. So it'll be more like 10 gigs of RAM if you run 2 hosts. Let's just go with that for the moment. If you want to run this the right way, you're going to need 2 Windows servers. If you can download Server 2012 R2 as an evaluation copy, and then you're going to need a domain controller, which will give you the ability to, it'll give you some experience deploying a domain controller, setting up Active Directory, setting up DNS, so on and so forth. I would recommend giving this guy 4 gigs of RAM and joining him to the management domain as well. And then you need another server, which this one, the domain controller is going to sit idle with nothing really going on at about 2 gigs of RAM, which is going to put you back up to 12. And then you're going to need a vCenter server. So a vCenter server, regardless if you download the Windows version, which is going to get installed on top of Windows Server, or you download the vCenter server appliance, you're going to need 8 gigs of RAM to roll this guy out. That's a minimum requirement. So that's going to put you at idle at a probably 5 to 6, which is going to put you between 17 and 18 gigs of RAM at an idle state. Therein lies why I say 32 gigs of RAM is a good number to start with, because that's going to let you scale it out a little bit, not go super crazy, but allow you to scale it out. And then this guy here is going to have 8. This is going to be vCenter. Okay. Now that I have all this set up right here, the next thing that I'm going to do is this red line here is going to be management. I'm going to need, I'll take the green line here. This green line, you're going to need one more VM. And this VM right here is going to be OpenFiler. OpenFiler is going to allow you to create shared storage. Now, whether it's shared storage that you call from a portion of the onboard hard drive, or wherever you are able to get a sizable amount of hard drive space. I would say north of 300 or 400 gigs. And the reason I say that is because once you start deploying a couple of VMs and get them rolling out, then you're going to need a little bit of hard drive space to play with it. And I usually start off with 200 gigs if I'm going to be doing just a couple of VMs. And the reason I do that is if I create a 200 gig hard drive for OpenFiler to use as like an iSCSI target or an NFS share, when I go to allocate that to the VMs, to the ESXi host, after I've deployed the storage to them, I can play around with expanding and increasing the size of a VMS data store. VMFS data store, excuse me. And by doing that, I can go and play around with the amount of allocation for that. So this is going to be my last VM here. And this is going to be OpenFiler. This guy's really lightweight. You only need 1 gig of RAM here. And you're going to have all these guys connected to the management network. Now, one thing that I recommend you do is here on the domain controller, you're going to need a set of DNS. And on here, for every one of these hosts that you're going to have, you can create a host name. Now, typically, I like to use, because I own a training company and I own a domain, I can use my domain in my training. So I always use RikersIslandTraining.com or RIT.com. I use that. That's actually not the correct URL for my training site, but if you type in Rikers Island Training, you're going to find that online and available. I don't have any VMware courses up there currently. I'm in the process of recording it right now. But what you could do is you could take openfiler.rit.com, vcenter.rit.com, or you could take, before I used to use company.com. So it was no particular company itself, because you could take like abc.com, but that would be, abc.com is an actual domain by ABC, the news outlet. Other people type in lab.local. You could use that one as well. It's really up to whatever you want to choose. So pick your poison, however you want to roll it out, it's up to you. So what ends up happening now is you've got this, so now you're sitting in at around 19 to 20 gigs of RAM allocated. So now what I get to go do is I had to go in here and create 3 to 4 new networks. So the first network I'm going to create is going to be the network that for the storage. So the storage is going to come into play and is going to span all the VMs and OpenFiler. Okay, and it's going to bypass the vCenter server, the domain controller, Windows 10 for the admin, for management. You don't need to apply it there. You just need this. So this is going to be this red one here is going to be management. The green one here is going to be storage or SAN. Now the SAN could be iSCSI delivered, because in a software ESXi host, the software iSCSI adapter is available to be installed. You could also use NFS if you want to use file level storage. The next one we're going to have here is we're going to say blue, and this guy here is going to be for vMotion, which is one of the core reasons why VMware is so popular. So we're going to come across here and we're going to tie these guys to here. So the VMs need to be able to talk to each other over the vMotion network. So this would be vMotion. vMotion is the ability to take a running live VM and migrate it from VM or ESXi host to ESXi host live. So you could be working on it, and then you might notice a little bit of slowness while it's being migrated, but it gives you the ability of doing a live migration. The last one here we're going to do is going to be black, and this guy right here is going to be your HA and fault tolerance network. So this is going to be HA and fault tolerance. So that's going to allow you to take things like if you have a VM or let's say an ESXi host crashes, you can what they call evacuate and restart those same VMs on another ESXi host. Now in this particular case, I have 64 gigs of RAM on my server, and I'm using about 40% of it. Now what I've done is I've actually taken the Windows 10 computer, the domain controller, and the vCenter server, and I have removed them from this design. So I have another server that I have installed all of these components on. So I have another ESXi server that's an actual ESXi server. It's an IBM server that I've taken and installed ESXi directly to the hard drive. So I have 2 type 1 servers and I have 1 type 2. The one you're looking at right now is the type 2. We're running VMware Workstation on top of Windows Server 2012. My 2 type 1 are running on top of IBM currently down in my basement. and then I have connectivity to them through my home network. So that's basically how I go about doing that. So I can scale up, and as it sits right now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll have 8 ESXi hosts. Now I don't plan on actually using 6.5-4, but I can if I want to. I'm going to just show you how to take and install ESXi 6.5, and then once it's installed, I'll be able to go back and delete it. That's one thing I also recommend too, is once you've installed ESXi once and you've got the management set up and you can connect into it and all that's gravy, and you've installed a virtual machine and you can control the virtual machine, and, excuse me, and you're feeling on top of the world like I know I did the first time I did it, blow it away and redo it. The only way you get better at doing something is if you do it over and over and over again. This is why I do so many videos and I test so many things out, is I want to be proficient whenever I do it. So now that you have this breakdown, if I was you, if you're still watching, thank you for continuing to still watch. Screenshot this. This will help you build out a basic environment if you want to go do that. Now, one of the other things that's a luxury that I have that you may not, and one of the things that I have the ability of doing is I have 2 NICs in this particular computer. And what I'm able to do is one NIC is allocated to this management domain, which means that from the outside network, my home PC is not directly connected to this server. So I can, over my network via an IP subnet, I can reach all of these servers via IP. I can ping them. But I'm using a connection to another PC to actually manage them. My other NIC that I have on here is currently set up to talk to my home switch, which connects to the internet, which that network adapter is mapped to VMware Workstation to allow a separate network that these ESXi hosts can have allocated to them to get outside to the outside world. So the way that this would work is, so I'm hoping that everybody has screenshotted this, because this is going to help you kind of judge and gauge your deployment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear the screen. If you need to rewind and write it down or screenshot it or whatever, please do so. Go ahead and, I got to go back over here and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the networking works here real quick. Click in the virtual network editor, and if I come in here, I've got 2 bridge adapters. The first bridge adapter connects me into the management network, and then I have 4 other ones that are considered to be host only. Now, the only thing about host only that comes into play here is any network adapters placed in the host only network can only talk with inside the host. So inside of VMware Workstation right here. So I can, and this guy right here to 10.1.1 network is used for storage. This one is used for vMotion. This one is used for high availability and fault tolerance. And this guy right here is used for, I think I have a second adapter, a second network. I had to go back and look. I don't remember off the top of my head. But this is how they're allocated. So I have storage, vMotion, high availability, fault tolerance. Maybe I have 1 extra, but it really doesn't make much of a difference. You can go up to 20 adapters or 20 networks in VMware Workstation 12. I think they started that in like 11 or 10, but I'm using 12 Pro. And then you just give it an IP range, and away you go. This guy right here is mapped to this other adapter, which gives my VMs in a different bridge group the ability of talking to the outside world. So that's how you would set that up. Once you apply those configurations, they will take place locally. So let's go ahead and go back to 6.5-4. So now we actually can go through the installation. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Enter key. I'm going to accept the EULA, or the End User License Agreement. And then it's going to go ahead and scan the available devices. It's going to find the 40 gig hard drive. And the 40 gig hard drive is going to be what is used to install ESXi on top of. I'm going to hit the Enter key. I'm going to choose the US default as the keyboard type, and the password I'm going to use is something generic. You choose something that you would use, and then hit the Enter key. And then what it's going to do is going to go through and it's going to make sure that the CPU's got enough resources, the right amount of RAM has been allocated, things like that. And then it's saying that the CPU of this host may not be supported for future ESXi releases. Please plan accordingly. That's okay. I'm going to hit the enter key, and it's going to ask me if I want to install ESXi on VMHBA1, which is the directly attached hard drive. I'm going to hit F11 to say, yes, go ahead and do that. This is going to take a few minutes to do its thing, and that's pretty much the way that works. What I'm going to do while that's installing, I'm going to take you guys over here to my other host, or my other PC here, and I'm going to log you guys into the web appliance of ESXi 65-1. So I'm going to type in, I've got Active Directory associated to this guy already, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. So here I am, I'm logged in. I have I have the networking set up for this guy already. I've got the storage already set up. Click on the networking real quick. I've got this is the management. This allows me to communicate with this host over the network. I also have SAN 1 and SAN 2. These are network adapters to bring in the storage. I have vMotion, so I can do vMotion between my ESXi hosts once I get 652 and 653 into vCenter. I have an HA and fault tolerance, so if I want to do fault tolerance logging and do communication between two ESXi hosts on the same VM name, I can do that. And then I have a VM network here. This is going to be the mapping for a guest VM. So I could take this guy right here. It's actually not operational at the moment, but if I was to come in here and say edit settings, I could come in here and tie, give it a second to load. I could tie, as soon as it's done loading, go ahead and go here. The network adapter, I could tie this to the memory limit does not accept the, okay. Okay, currently there's not a network adapter. That's odd. Okay. Networking, VM network. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I switch 0. Oh, it's associated. It's up to 1,000 megabits per second. Why did it not show up? That's weird. Oh, right there. It says it right there. It's connected. There's the only drawback is I have not physically connected the cable from my home switch to this to the server in order for this to work. So it doesn't actually have connectivity outside to the outside world currently. So let's go ahead and go back to the other host, and he should be almost done. So let's go back to this guy real quick. What I want to show you now is we're going to log in. Let me go ahead and restart that guy real quick. There's a video that I did in order to allow Windows session authentication here. You guys, if you look through the playlist on my YouTube channel, you should see where it says fixing. What is it? What did I title it? I forgot. The name of it is Disabling Chrome Updates, Installing Older Chrome Versions, and Fixing the VMware Client Integration Plugin Issues. It's about a 15-minute video where I go through and I explain to you how I was able to get Flash to work in Workstation, or I'm sorry, in Google Chrome. Because in, I think, release 45, they started disabling capabilities. Another, I think, on release 65 or 61. So, but this is the VMware vSphere client. This is 6.0. We go to this guy here. No, this one here. Help and about VMware vSphere. This is 6.0. I have 6.5 running right here. Okay. Allow, log in. This is vCenter 6.5. They're very close in comparison if you look at them, but this is the 6.5 web client. Give that a couple seconds to load. Now, all of these servers, this vCenter server, this vCenter server, this vCenter server appliance, I'm still in the process of bringing up the vCSA for 6.5. Those are all running on a different server. So I needed more than 64 gigs of RAM. I needed more like 128, but in this case here, by distributing the load, I'm able to work with it. And what I've already explained to you guys should be more than enough to get the ball rolling. So this guy here, this is this guy right here is the other web client. Actually, this is not going to work. I can't log in this way. I have to log in. This is the HTML client. This is the Flash one. So if I come over here and click on this guy, and I come in here, I type in administrator at vsphere.local. I type in the password here. I'll be able to log in, and this is going to be the HTML vCenter. This one's a little bit different. This one's a little harder to navigate. I think this one's still in development, to be honest with you. And I have not spent any time at all in this particular UI. I'm still in the process of learning this one. But the 6.0, 6.5, the course that I'm working on for 6.5 is in the process. I'm in the very early stages of it. But I figured I would start recording videos. And then as I go through and learn the technology, I'm going to dump a bunch of YouTube videos out. And then I'll, once I get the cert, I'll take all these videos. I'll leave a handful on YouTube, but the rest of them will be up on Rikers Island Training for your people to come and purchase access to see. So we're going to go and so now this is the same server, just two different views of it. This is the HTML5 client. This is the Flash client. And as I said, I haven't had a chance to get in here and play around. I mean, this is really similar to 6.0. which I'm pretty familiar with already, which is what 5.5 is where I started on this. So I've been dealing with 5.5 for a while now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to my host, and we're nearly done. It takes a little bit to install, but then again, I'm installing over a USB connection and not a SATA. So it's a little slower overall. But once this is done installing, you'll be able to take and roll out with this. So the other thing to keep in mind is you might say, well, how do I download all this content? How do I go out and, do I have to pay for it? And luckily for you, the answer is no. Now I work for Cisco and a VMware partner, so I get access to all these bits for free. So all I got to do is go online and download the, I don't know, what is it, like 7 or 8 gigs worth of data to get everything running. But if you were to go to VMware.com, go ahead and pause my video and bring you guys back up to VMware.com. Here on VMware.com, which I'm logging into the website via the server that I'm using to test all this out on. So you see all the vSphere client openings up there. If you wanted to learn how this stuff works, all you've got to go do is from the Downloads tab here, if you click on vSphere and click on this, and let's say you've never dealt with VMware before. Okay, in this particular case, I've dealt with it for years, but let's say you're brand new to it or you want to play around with the technology. What you can do is you can come in here and say, I want to go in and play around with the stuff. So there's the ability to, you can download a 60-day trial. And let's see if it will, where is it? So if you haven't already registered, go and register to do so. And once you've done that, if you go, I think training is another option, another path you can take. And no. This will get you This is if you want to go get certified in VMware, you can do that. But this is where you're going to go to do evaluation. So create an account. Once you've created your account, you'll have to validate your email and then log in. And once you've logged in, you'll be able to download the material. So let me go ahead and log in and I'll show you what it is that I mean. Okay, so I successfully registered as a new register. So just give them a valid email address. They'll email you, you validate it, you log in, and then they'll say, okay, what do you want to test? What do you want to test out? So we're going to say there's lots of available free trials that you can deal with. So you can download any one of these. So VMware vSphere, VMware Horizon 7, Virtual SAN. The caveat with Virtual SAN though is you have to have a license to enable vSAN at the vCenter level. If you don't have that, then you're going to be out of luck. So let's go ahead and take a look at all of the things that I can have an evaluation here. So we look through here and I don't have any current evaluations. So I get started with an evaluation if I wanted to, and it's going to ask me what do I want to play with. So if you come through here and you can download any of these capabilities. So you can download, if you are not part of a partnership with VMware, you can't download NSX. Now let me preface this. You have to have a customer that has deployed NSX in order for this to pop up. If you don't, you're not going to be able to mess with it. So if you want to expand any of these guys out, you can play around with Horizon View if you want to. If you want to play around with data center and cloud management, so if you want to deal with a vRealize automation, you can download any one of these. For any of these, the other thing you have, if you don't have the ability of playing around with this stuff at home, you could use the hands-on lab, both the intro and the advanced. And the nice thing about the hands-on lab is they're free. You just have to go register and then sign in, and then it actually builds out some gear for you. So that's one of the cool things here. So download VMware vSphere. So if I was to click on download free trial, it's going to redirect me. And then it's going to ask me what it is that I want to go download. So here I'm logged in and I have the ability of downloading all this stuff here. So I can download the ESXi ISO, which includes VMware tools. I always download this version. Now this is 6.5. I don't know if you're going to be able to change the version here. No big deal if you can't. 6.5 is still a pretty good version to play around with. But the other one you get to choose to download here is vCenter Server, both the Windows version and the version for Linux, so the appliance. You can download VMware vRealize automation and operations and log insight. And then the other one you get to download is some additional components like replication, data protection, and data extensions. So I've manually downloaded all these, and they are good for 60 days. So what happens if you go beyond 60 days? Well, that's one of those type of situations where you get to go in and you can reinstall it and get a fresh 60 days. So you can continue to reinstall over a period of time, and that's going to let you play around with the technologies and see how they work. It's really beneficial too, because then you're going to get to test the technology, play around with it. Now you might say, well, where do I get all the ISOs to install Windows and Linux? My friends, a little bit of Googling doesn't hurt anyone. So if you Google how to download Windows Server 2012, you can download that as an eval copy. I wouldn't tell you to download something if you couldn't get it for either very, very cheap or for free and legally. So that's one of the things that's really, really important here. So any of these you can download them for free. I'm not going to do that because I've already got everything that I need, and if I want to, I can go and go other places to get the content that I need. And the reason, what I mean by that is, if I need to download something specific, I reach out to my VMware account rep, and they give me access to whatever I need. So I just go through VMware to get what I need from there. And I have lots of access through Cisco, so because of the Cisco partnership that I have. But that's pretty much how it works. So that's the download the bits if you want to play with the bits and go from there. So we should be nearly done with this install, and we are. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key, and it's going to reboot the server. And in the process of rebooting the server, this is going to be the point where I say, okay, while this is rebooting, I'm going to go over to DNS, and I'm going to add an entry for DNS. So to do that, I'm going to press Control-Alt to break out of that screen. And then I'm going to look for the DNS server, which is this guy right here. I'm going to bring him over. This is my DNS server. It's also my domain controller for Rikers Island training for my local connectivity. Here I've got my ADUC opened. I'm going to go to the server manager, and I'm going to say Tools and then DNS. And underneath the forward lookup zones, I'm going to click on RIT, right click and say New Host. I'm going to type in ESXi 65-4, and I'm going to give it an IP address of 10.255.1. Let me see if a specific IP is available. Let me ping 10.255.1.24, and it appears that that IP address is open and available. Yes. So 24, I'm going to click on Add Host. Now it's been added, so that when I go to ping this, or go look it up, there's going to be a DNS entry for it available. So to test that, if I was to go back over here to this server and I was to pull up this guy, let me go ahead and close out of my VMware stuff here. If I was to come up here and say ping ESXi 65-4, it's going to tell me that it's 10.255.1.24, which tells me that DNS is resolving correctly. I come back over here to this guy. Now it's almost done loading, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to log in and set up the basic network information so that you can log into this guy and start messing around with them. So now we're at this point. I'm going to go ahead and type in F2 to bring up the and if you're not familiar with this user interface, this is called the Direct Console user interface. It's how you interact directly with the server. You really can't do anything here other than some basic networking and some password information. So what you're basically doing is you're giving it information so that you can go to the vSphere client and log into him via vSphere. So we're going to come down here to the Configure Management Network. I'm going to say the IPv4 configuration, and I'm going to set the IP address, spacebar to set static address. I'm going to come down here and type in 10.255.1.24 /24 subnet mask. And the subnet is 10.255.1.1 for the default gateway. I'm going to come down to DNS configuration, and I'm going to say 10.255.1.124 is my domain controller, and I'm going to say 8.8.8.8 is going to be the alternative, and this guy's host name is ESXi 65-4.rit.com. Hit the OK, press escape to exit out. I'm going to say yes to restart the management network, and then from there I am squared away. Now I get to go back over to this host, and I get to go hit the up arrow under here and hit the enter key. Now it responds. Now that that's in place, I can go ahead and click over here, and I get to type in HTTPS. In this particular case, I get to type in ://ESXi 65-4 and hit the enter key. It pulls this guy up. It's a self-signed certificate, so it's not going to trust it. Go in here, and then I brought to this page, and then I get to type in root, and then whatever the password is that I set, log in, and then I will be voila. That is how you get that situated. Now here's the rub. Okay. One of the things that this last thing here is the customer experience improvement program. I opt out of that. Now here's one of the rubs. Okay, and the rub being a caveat. One of the caveats that I've ran into with VMware in the recent past from, I think it's been every version of VMware that I've ever worked with the VMware Workstation specifically. If I go in and I specify multiple network adapters as I'm building the VM itself, those network adapters don't seem to apply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show you guys how to, it says networking, I've got 2 here, which you get the, if we go to physical NICs, there's only 1 associated, VMNIC 0, and you get virtual switches. I only have 1 virtual switch, but I have 2 port groups. I have the VM network and I have the management network. The VM network is where VM guest VNICs get placed inside of, and the management network is how I connect into this guy to basically manage it. So there's an active port, which is the VM kernel adapter, which is what this guy is. The VM kernel adapter sits there, and that's where the IP address gets placed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go show you guys how to power down the VM correctly, bring the VM, and then add network adapters to the VM, and then power them back on. So we're going to go back over here to this guy. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit F12. Actually, I need to escape out one more step. Now at this point here, if I want to gracefully shut down the host, I need to press F12, log in with the password, and hit the enter key. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to shut down the guest or do I want to restart it? Now when I say guest, I'm meaning the ESXi host. I'm going to press F2 and it's going to shut down the host. Now this is how you gracefully shut it down. This assumes that all the guest VMs running on top of this host have already been shut down. So let me go ahead and click in here and go Task Manager while this guy's still running. I'm running at 44% of my RAM, which isn't that much when you consider it. So 4% of 64 was being allocated by one host. So 10% would be 6.4, 5% would be 3.2. So right around 2.5, 3 gigs of RAM was being tied up on the server to run this guest. So I'm going to come in here and edit the virtual machine settings. I'm going to add 4 network adapters. Say network adapter, click next. I'm going to say this guy's going to go VMnet 1, click finish, add another one, VMnet adapter, this guy's going to go in VMnet 2. So VMnet 1 is storage, VMnet 2 is vMotion, VMnet 3 is high availability fault tolerance, and then I'm going to say add one more because I just feel like doing it, and I'll say this goes in VMnet 4 just because I want to. I'm going to say OK, and then that guy is squared away. I'm going to go ahead and press power on this virtual machine. Now where this comes into play is if you look down here in the lower right hand corner of your screen, you'll see that I have 3 adapters showing up now. The only one that's actually going to show any activity is going to be the one for VMnet 1, the bridge one, because there's actually data communication on that network adapter. The other 4 are going to show as none because there won't be any other devices in those networks to be able to communicate with. Which actually isn't 100% true because there's other hosts that have network adapters that are operational in that host. So you might see a flicker or 2 here and there, but I wouldn't waste my time worrying about that because that's not where I want you guys to focus your time and effort right now. So this will get you the adapters, and what I want to do is I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to wait for this guy to finish booting, I'll take you back to the host through the web client through this guy, and if we go in here it's going to tell me that he can't connect. What you'll see is you'll see a bunch of physical NICs, and then not only will you see a bunch of physical NICs, I'll be able to show you guys how to associate that and stuff like that. But that's basically what I've got going on right now, and we'll wait till this guy reboots and then I'll bring you guys back in. Okay, now that our host is back up, we're going to go back over to this guy and we're going to go ahead and resync. And it's going to make us log back in. Actually, yeah, it's going to make us log back in. We're going to type in root and the password. and voila. So now we're back in. So once it syncs, it's going to see multiple adapters now. Now I can go in here and through the client, I can go ahead and map all these adapters to different V switches and different processes and services to be able to go in there and get all these guys operational. I'm not going to do that right in this video. I'm going to do this in another video and walk you guys through the step-by-step process of how that comes into play and explain why we do things the way that we do them with inside of our VMware setups. So that's pretty much it, guys. Setting up ESXi is very, very easy to do. As you can tell, it doesn't take a whole lot. If you have any questions, I will leave the comment section open in the video. Feel free to comment and stuff like that and go from there. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys next time. Until then, take it easy.